Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is Accessible PDF Forms, hosted by the Department of Disabilities Technology Assistance Program and the IT Accessibility Initiative. My name is Stephen. I'm the director of the initiative. Uh, Usual housekeeping items for all of our webinars. We have captioning available today. So if you would like, you can enable it from the closed caption button on your menu ribbon. This webinar is being recorded. That recording will be posted to our YouTube channel, most likely next week, early next week, probably Tuesday. You should have received an email about 11 o'clock this morning that had this slide deck and the Word document that is going to be kind of the start of our process today. The end document that I will create during this demo, I will send out along with the recording and the slide deck again so that you guys have a working example to start with. If you have any questions, please save them to the end. You can use chat or Q&A to ask them, but this webinar does kind of run up against time as in the past, so we're going to try and get through everything to give that time for you guys. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So I just want to run through a quick refresher on Adobe Acrobat and PDFs, just to remind everyone, if you went to the NFB's presentation on accessible PDFs last month, or if you've worked with PDFs before, this should look familiar to you. So the Adobe Suite uses what are called tags. What these are is a way of defining elements for interpretation. So what Adobe calls a figure is an image, or if they call a paragraph versus a heading versus a span, that kind of thing. So it tells other parts of the computer what this particular thing in the document should be considered or called. Tags read very similar to HTML. There are some differences though. For like paragraph, Adobe and HTML both use P. For a first level heading, Adobe and HTML will both use heading 1. Same for table, but there are some minor differences, like Adobe calls them figures, but HTML they would call them images. But the structure and the look are very similar. So if you know HTML, tags should be very intuitive for you. Not having these tags means that assistive technology is going to have trouble interpreting the document correctly. Some really robust programs like JAWS, the screen reader, and VDA, the screen reader, or Dragon, the voice control software, will try to make as much sense of the document as they can. They'll be able to scan it and try and read it back, but they'll lose the formatting, they'll lose context, they'll lose alt text. All of that will not be available. So there's a lot of information that a user would be missing without these tags. And that's why it's so important that any document we create has these available. You can visit our website, mdod.maryland.gov, for more information. We've done webinars previously on this topic. As I mentioned, NFB just did one on this topic. We also have resources and links to other areas that can teach you more about this. Now for today, though, we're not going to go into much detail about this part because we're getting into the next step of the process, the next level of accessibility. So today's goals are: first, explain what makes a fillable PDF form accessible. Second, work through an example document to explain the process. And then third, show some strategies for dealing with some of Adobe's nuances, because it is a very complex program and there are times when you want to set up something and it doesn't come across correctly. So you're going to have to do some manual adjustment to make it work. That image on screen there is a fillable PDF with the reading order shown. So that's how we would determine the reading order. And that's going to be one of the steps in our process today. So first, the key rules. One is that it's always easier to start with an already accessible PDF or another document type. The reason for that is because you don't have to redo all that work. B, when you're making a form, you're going to have to insert the form fields into the middle of the rest of the accessible tags. So without that, that makes it harder for Adobe to adjust or create that reading order and for you to assign a new reading order if you need to. So it just makes everything harder and it requires a lot more work. So starting with something that's accessible from the get-go and planned to be a form is a lot easier. Second thing is you always need to add labels via the properties menu. So every form field will have a properties menu that you can open either by double clicking or right clicking to open the context menu. In there, there'll be a name and tooltip. Both those fields are what communicate the name of that field to the user's assistive technology. Without that, the user can move from field to field and they won't be told what it is. They'll have to go looking for the instructions outside of it. And most users will be smart enough to connect context, but they might not get it right because they're making guesses based on what they're hearing in what order. So it's a lot easier for everyone's usage if you set it up this way and they can just move from field to field and put in exactly what you need. This is especially important for part 3, where if you need a specific format for something and you need to notify users of this, are there character limits? Like you only want them to enter 10 characters for a phone number? Or is there a particular format, like you want the state abbreviation rather than it's spelled out and they only can use 2 characters? Social security number, like the image on screen. That social security number has a very specific format. Do you want dashes in it? In which case, you need to set it up to do that, and you need to tell your user that it's expected. Otherwise, they might just enter a random string of numbers. It might not be correct. The fourth point is you need to manually assign a reading order in both the Forms tool and the Accessibility tool. There's 2 different reading orders in play with form fields. One is the standard document reading order. So this is what you set up ahead of time when you created the document. It's also the reading order that the form fields will move into. So when you're just reading through the document, like the image on screen, it'll go loan applicant information, then first name form field, middle name form field, last name form field, etc. The reading order in the Forms tool is just from field to field. So someone who's just pressing tab and moving from edit box to edit box will go first name, edit field, to middle name, edit field, to last name, edit field, and they'll skip all the text that you see on screen. So that's 2 different reading orders, and they're in 2 separate locations. So you want to check both so that any user who's using one or the other is still reading in the correct manner and entering all the information that you need from them. And then finally, playing on that is you need to tag and assign the reading order after creating the form, because you can't create these tags without the fields in play. So once you've set the reading order in the Forms tool, you've prepped the form, you've made it, you've got everything you need from it, you'll go back to the Accessibility tool, retag everything. There's a little trick that I'm going to show you guys when we get there that makes this process a bit easier. And it should go by relatively smoothly if we do things correctly. One thing I do want to mention is the use of tables, especially for formatting purposes. So Acrobat will attempt to use the cells to create form fields. When it prepares the form automatically, it scans for anything like those boxes in a table cell, or if there's an underline with nothing in it or above it, it's going to try and put a form field there. And it's gotten smart enough that it'll try to add context. So things like a radio button with yes or no, it might try to fill those in for you. If it's something like a choose one or something, it might assign a drop down or a list drop box. It's gotten pretty intuitive with those kind of things, but it does make mistakes. So just keep that in mind, is that it can be useful for that. And it does look appealing, but I do want to warn you that tables add a lot of extraneous information to screen readers. They can also sometimes interfere with voice control because now users have to use a different command input in order to move around and also get to that field and use it. But with a table, a screen reader is going to read the row and column number along with the field's label. So now it has row 3, column 4, first name. They don't really need that information. It's really just getting in the way because they just need the form field. And Adobe doesn't really give us a way to hide that table information from them. So honestly, it's a bit better to try and remove the table from the reading order or not use one at all. Um, Tables have also, in at least my experience, created in other programs have interfered with the reading order in PDF forms. I've had an issue before where attempting to change the order will either default the form fields to either the top or the bottom of the list, and no matter how much I move them around, it'll still force them back there. This can also happen sometimes with tables where I'm trying to just tag a form field with a particular label or something next to it, and instead it's assigning it to another part because it's trying to follow that table structure instead of the reading order I'm assigning, because that tag tree is ultimately its final say in how the document is interpreted. So they can be challenging to remove in PDFs. It's doable. And if we have time, I will try to show you at least how to do so by the end of this. But it can be, tables can be problematic for this purposes. So I just want to warn you guys, I honestly don't recommend using them, but they can save you time and they can look cleaner depending on your own skill levels or your own personal preferences. So if you're going to use one, just be prepared for a little extra work when we get further on. With that, let's go ahead and get started with the demonstration. So I'm going to point out, let's start with Word here. The reason for that is because Word documents are where a lot of us start with these kinds of things. You can be starting with something like InDesign or Illustrator or something. Your process is going to look a bit different. But if you're using Word, this is a good place to start. The reason for that is because we have a lot of options for creating things like headings. We can set up tables if you want. We can create spacing, that kind of thing. We can make our look however we wish, and it has a pretty solid starting reading order. Like, because it's set up, as a text document and text editing, it already reads top down. It has a list already assigned. A lot of that work I don't need to do because Word's taking care of it for me, which is great. I do have to use like the preset style in order to make this a heading. That's fine. That actually helps. A couple things I want to point out for this is, so there's a table form creation example here. If you notice where I've created extra spaces for where the fields will be, last name, email, state, are you a US citizen? I have yes, no, in 2 separate boxes. This should create, if it does it correctly, should fill in these boxes. I have these empty rows here just to demonstrate how Adobe might fill in some extra spaces for us, depending on what we do and what we're going to have to do with that. Now, for forms I create, here's what I did with the areas that I intend to have form fields. So I have first name, last name, phone, email, address. So what I did is, if you notice, I can't, when I move down from first name to the next line, it just skips directly down to phone. There is no blank space here. The reason for that is because if I did, it would create another tag here because it's saying there's a character here because you pressed an enter, there's a paragraph. So I tried to skip that by increasing the space after the paragraph and the line spacing. So I jumped it up to 3.0. You can also use line spacing options to increase the space if you need more space between lines, or to indent them, whatever you wish. So that way, I don't have to worry about a blank reading here and having to delete an extra tag that's in the way or something. It should make this a lot easier when I'm putting in the form. I don't have an underline or a table cell here, so I'm going to have to manually put in a form field here. I'm okay with doing that, but I just want to warn you guys that if you wish, it might be easier for you if you do create that line afterwards. If I wanted to add another line here and then created an underscore, Adobe will use that underscore in order to make a form field. So that's another way to do this. There is a couple other things I want to point out. So in this case, I have all these indentations in order to create this second column. That's one way of doing it. I will warn you that these are all characters here. Visually, there's nothing there, but programmatically, there are spaces there, and Adobe's going to try and tag them. We'll see that when we get to the form fields, but that is something to be aware of, that there are these little extra tags you might have to deal with. Another alternative is instead just using a different layout. This part here that I have for some checkboxes later on uses a 2-column layout in order to create that spacing. So you might want to spend a little extra time using the tools you have, like line spacing, or indentation, or even the layouts, which I believe is in design. Nope, no, layout. Duh. Use the layout option here on the ribbon, columns. And you can use like breaks and whatever in order to give yourself that look you want. As I mentioned, I don't put in underlines because I add that on the actual form field itself so that it matches exactly to the form field Adobe's creating, but you can do it that way too. It's not a big deal. I just find it a little bit easier to attach it just to the form field rather than have to deal with untagging and then dealing with extra peripherals in Adobe. So once you've written up your document and you've created all your spacing for your form fields, you want to make sure to save it as an Adobe PDF. Now there's one thing that's very important you do. And yes, okay, save. What you need to do as you're saving it, when you're at the save dialog box here, you want to click options, and then you want to click enable accessibility and reflow with tag PDF. It's the third checkbox in this list. That's really, really important because if you don't do that, all of the work you've done, like putting in headings, putting in lists, putting in a table, all of that's gone now. And Adobe is going to have to redo all of that work. And you probably will have to redo some of it as well over there in order to make it read how you want a user to read it. So make sure you check that box so that you don't have to redo all of your work. Once you've clicked it once, it should save for all of your documents from then on, but every now and then, or if you see something that comes out that doesn't have the tags, go back and check that option just to make sure. Now I already went and saved this, so I'm just going to close my Word document here. And I'm going to open our PDF. So we have our document. If I open the reading order, which is this Z icon on the right side ribbon, second from last item, we can check our reading order here. So page 1, here's our reading order list. So that's all of these elements, and they are tagged this way. If you notice, there's some that are empty. That's the reason for that is because those are those empty table cells. That's all of those empty items here that are the empty cells inside the table. The reading order doesn't show a table, but if I look at the accessibility tag, there's our table right there. So that's how we know that this is working. So I know this document is accessible. It's great. Now what I want to do is prepare a form. So I'm going to click prepare a form from the tools menu. I need to use the open file and click create form. So it's going to fill in automatic form fields where it thinks it is. Again, it's going to use those table cells. If you notice, it tries to use any context around it in order to create the form fields. So this one was first name, that's last name, that's email, address, yes, no, state, and then it tries to add like, are you a US citizen? Because it's like, oh, there's text up here above it and there's a field below it. Let's fill that in. Or the same for state. So it's trying to guess based on what it can find. In this case, we have these empty fields that we don't need. We're just going to go ahead and delete those. So I can just click them and press delete on my keyboard and they're gone. Now, in my other creation example, it didn't make the fields. So I have to go ahead and fill those in manually. We're going to get to that, but I want to start up here just to show you guys what more we would do with this. So it has the name correct, great, but we need to, there we go. I double clicked it, that opened this menu. It was a second slow, but if I open the right click, properties is that first one. So that's there as well. But we have name and tooltip, and they both say first name. So this is labeled. We've got all we need here. This is great. The reason we want name and tooltip to match is because screen readers will use both. They'll use name when they first get to it, but if someone presses like the help button or something, they'll hear the tooltip. Tooltip is also helpful if you're just hovering over it, especially if you don't have like visually, you haven't added like, I have the 25 down here for 25 characters. So if I put 25 characters on this, someone hovers over it, they'll see 25 characters and know that. So that's very useful for them. And sometimes, users will have other options like pressing the help button or voice control saying, show tooltip, and the tooltip will pop up with that. So that's why we need to make sure that they match and provide all the information we need. Some other options that are important for us is appearance. By default, usually if you've seen Adobe fillable forms, they'll have this kind of like light blue background. Sometimes that doesn't come through depending on if the form's already been filled out or sometimes the setup. So we can adjust that to add, we can add border color, we can add fill color. So I can make the background a light blue, I can make it a green. Don't go crazy with this, just be aware that this is an option available to you. In general, the default blue is fine, but if you have, for whatever reason, you have like background elements or if you're finding that it's a little hard to see or read, you might want to consider just filling it in. Border color will be useful for us when we get down to our form fields here, because we want to add that border color to show people here is where it is. Font size is by default auto. Usually I just set this at a default like 12 or something. The reason it's auto is because if you don't have a character limit, it'll make it large and then it'll just keep shrinking it until it can fit everything on there. So I would recommend that you do set a minimum font size, because otherwise it might shrink what they write in there down to a point where no one can read it. So options, this is a good place to check for if you like create a long text box for someone to say, additional details or something like that. You want to click multi-line here in the bottom list, because that enables it to, instead of just writing forever to the right, it'll start filling it in and kind of set like a border on the right side or left side, depending on your language, so that they'll fill in like a paragraph would. Scroll on text just to let you read past that point. So you might want to disable that, especially if you put in multi-line. This is also where you put in the character limit. So it defaults to 10, but I can change that to whatever I want. There's 25 there. One last thing to point out is there are format categories, and you can use these for things like numbers. Oops. Oh, right, because I set that to a multi-line. So let me close that. It auto saves your work, or rather, when you create a form, let's press Control S while we're thinking of it, and save our document to the desktop so that, nope. There we go. Save your work so that you don't lose it. But any change you make to it will automatically be done. There's no like, accept changes or whatever. Your changes are automatically applied. You just need to make sure you save the file over again. But as I was saying, actually, let's go down to email. I believe email might have something here. No. No, that's multi-line too. Well, there we go. All right, so date. Just for the email field, even though it's not, we're going to show you this. There are date options, so you can select what format you're showing. So if you just want a single character, if you want to make sure, if it's like April, for the first option here, M day or month, day, year. This would be today would be 4/17/24. You can have them write it out so that it's 04/17/2024, and it will force that format onto this field. You can do that. There's also some special ones like zip code, phone number, so automatically force that format. Their social security number, which automatically puts a mask on the field so that you can't see it once it's saved. So just be aware that there are these particular formats that might be very useful for you. So I'm going to close this, reset that. Oh, I should have mentioned this at the start of our presentation today. I apologize, but everything I'm doing is in Adobe Acrobat Pro or Acrobat DC, depending on what you want to call it, what it shows up as. You do need the paid version in order to do all this work. You can't do this with the free version. I believe someone with the free version can still fill in the form though, so that should be fine. One thing I do want to point out is that when you send this form to someone, if you send them the file, it'll just act as a file. But if you want them to like electronically sign it or something, you'll have to probably use the share or send form button in Adobe in order to get all that functionality, just so that you're aware of that. Now, moving on. So these first four fields working fine, great. However, this is a yes, no, but it made it text boxes. So we need these to change to radio buttons. Sometimes Adobe will apply that for us. This time it didn't. So I'm going to delete these. And then I'm going to add radio buttons here. And in our list of fields here, if you notice, it pops up as group 1 with choice 1, choice 2. I'm going to go back to my arrow. I'm going to open the first one. So the general tab is where we enter the group name. So this we want to be our question. So are you a US citizen? Okay, Control A to select all, and then Control C to copy, tab to move down to tooltip, and then copy into tooltip. Then I'm going to go to options, and this is where I can select what look of button style I want, and then also where the choice is going to be. So in this case, yes. Now, because I've renamed the group that this one is in, it's in a different one. So these are technically two questions right at the moment. When I change the no option to that group, it makes it part of this question. And then I can change this to no. And so now when a screen reader finds this question, if they go from email to this, they'll enter the group and say, and they'll hear radio group or radio button group, are you a US citizen? Option yes, unchecked. If they press arrow down, then they'll hear no, unchecked. And then they can select which one they want and move to the next thing. If they come back, they'll hear the same group question. We don't have to create any other labels for this to say, are you a US citizen? We don't have to separate instructions. It's all contained together. So very useful option. For state, we can leave as a text box if we want to, or we can have them fill in that. In this case, for the sake of time, we're just going to leave that as a fill-in. But for our form creation down here, I'm going to start filling in this. So here's our first name. Now I'm going to say first name. And then I'm going to say 25 characters so that people know they have 25 characters to fill this in. Now, I'm sure most of us know that the star means required. It's a very standard convention for forms. I can check that box here under common properties to make this a required. And that should communicate to screen readers when they get it. Again, that's one of those things that kind of pops up. It's like the electronic signature pops up more when you send it as a fillable form rather than just share the file. But that can get a little wonky. Now, this is because this is just floating in space here. I kind of want to add something to show people where this field is, just as another indicator other than color, because someone who's maybe blue-yellow colorblind might struggle to see the form field. Or if they're just tabbing through, when the tab or the cursor enters that field, that blue background disappears. So I want to make sure that they have some option to see it. So I can have the line style or line thickness here. I've made it black. And then line style, I can just make it an underline. I want 12-point font. If I really want to, I can make a fill color so that there's always a field behind it, or I can just leave it since I have the underline there. Options, I don't need this. I want to make sure that my actual limit is what I tell people it is. So fill that in. And this field should be good to go. Now I don't want to have to do all that work for the other form fields. So I am going to right click it. And then under options, I'm going to say use current properties as new defaults. If I select that, then the next time I make a form field, I can create that here and give it its one, last name, 25 characters, tooltip required, but its appearance is what I already set for the other one. And oh no, it didn't copy the, okay, so it only copies the look, but it means I don't have to redo this part at least. So saves me a little bit of time. It also applies to the size. Like if you notice when I made the first form field, I had to click and drag to make a size. It just defaults to a size here. So now I can keep doing this for the form fields. Boom, boom. I'm going to put a drop down here for this one because I want that to be a drop down. Then, phone number. Required. Nice thing about this one is that I can just go to special phone number, and that automatically applies that format I required, email address. I'm not going to go through all of that just to save time here, but do want to show that option. Now this is a drop down, kind of like the radio button. Oops, no, state. It'll try not to let you use the same name as another form field on the page. They do need to be unique. So if you're like have like persons 1, 2, 3, 4 on your form and like their name and such, you'll probably have to put in parentheses or something after it saying person 1's first name, person 2's first name, that kind of deal. So just be aware of that fact. But I can say, straight drop down example. General, it's like the radio buttons. The general applies this. The options are in, or the selectable choices are going to be in the options menu or the options tab. So here I can say, MD, I can add VA for Virginia, DE for Delaware, yada, yada. Export value is if you're doing any form calculations or validation, if you're doing like data handling. If you're doing that, you're far more advanced than I am. Great, keep up the good work. Just make sure that you're making it accessible by putting in like the other options I've been talking about. The selecting part here is your default, by the way. So whatever you have selected here is going to be what they see first in the field. So sometimes you might want to add, please select, and then you can move that up and have that be your default. Just be aware of, it's not like HTML where they can't, they have to select another option other than that one. So you might have to go back and tell them, hey, you selected the wrong thing. But by and large, doing this should be fine. If you mess up, you can delete options here, and you have that level of control. And then checkboxes. Checkboxes are kind of the same deal as radio buttons. The difference is that you really just have general name and tooltip, kind of like the text field. So I can just say requesting IT assistance here. Now, what I want to point out here is when I'm making this field, I didn't put in, no, I just want the solid around it. Font size really doesn't matter for a checkbox. I don't know why it's an option, but whatever. I want to point out that I didn't put the question here because there's 4 options here. And if I put the question, this is kind of a long, this might be a longer question. For this here, it's just please check one of the following. Not that bad. But if it was a longer thing, like an agreement, that's a full paragraph, I can't put that into the description of each checkbox. That's too long. So that's where I like to make what I call instruction fields. So a user can switch modes in their screen reader or something in order to read the question and then come back to the form field. But that's a little bit of extra work on their part, especially if they're just moving through the field, if they're pressing tab, to move from field to field, and they're just filling out the form. That's easier. So sometimes it's beneficial to just make a smaller text field here, kind of tiny, so that it doesn't really interfere with other people. And then add in the question. So I have the question, and then I switch this form field common properties to visible but doesn't print. And then I make it read only. And then usually I'll take away its border color so that people don't notice it, and just trying to make it as, as easy to skip as possible. So this is helpful because now the screen reader they'll go from the "Are you a US citizen?" straight to that instruction. They'll hear edit field, please check one of the following, read only. And then they can move to the next one. They'll hear requesting IT assistance, requesting AT assistance, yada, yada. So it sets up that instruction for them, read only, so it doesn't interfere. You can't enter extra data into it. You don't have to screw anything up, but they don't have to switch modes, go back to read instructions, then come back and switch modes again to start editing again. They can just move from field to field. For some people, that's just it's a usability thing. It just makes it easier. So while just having the field and having the question readable is quote unquote accessible, this is a better way for some people, and you're giving more options to just make the experience easier and flow better. I do want to show just a couple quick things that aren't related to accessibility, but if you're concerned with the look of your field, you can select fields. Like in this case, I'm holding control, selecting these fields. It's going to, whichever one has the size markers on it is kind of the master, quote unquote, of the selections. So if I hold control and I select, first name again, it makes that the first one. Then I can use the align tools and the prepare form in order to line them up. So in this case, they will align to the leftmost side of this field. I can then match their size if for whatever reason they're not matching. So in this case, like if I go to, hold on, if I select these fields and I select last name again, I can align again, and then I can match fields. So the state drop down matches that size. It helps you make it look how you want it to, make it look very uniform, rather than have these boxes and having to try and eyeball it, making sure they line up. No, you have the tools to make them line up exactly and fit size-wise, so that you don't have to put in this extra effort yourself to make it look neat and professional. Okay, so now I think this is good enough for this part. So what we need to do is we have our form fields. Now we need to check the reading order. This list here is the reading order for the form. So if someone was, again, pressing tab, just moving from field to field, it's going to follow this order. That includes anyone just using a keyboard, me or you. It is the default for a screen reader in edit mode. So this is a very important reading order. So we want to make sure this is right. It's going to follow what was originally created. So these form fields that Adobe put in are listed here. Now, because I deleted the one question and then added it back, it added it to the bottom. And then these other fields I created are added to the bottom as well. So I need to move these around to however I wish. Now I can just click and drag in the list. So easy to do, but just make sure that you are running through the order you want people to run through. First name, last name. That's especially true in some cases like this. Now, since this is in a table, it defaulted to left, right, left, right, left, right. Sometimes if your layout is rather complex or things are like really spaced up against each other, Adobe might mess up. Um, Here it was easy because we assigned it ourselves, as we created ones. But if I went, first name, phone number, address first, and then did the other column, it would show up as that, and I'd have to rearrange all of these again. So just be aware of that, is that you do have to adjust this manually, but it's pretty easy to do. This is going to annoy me, so I'm going to change this quick. If for whatever reason you need to edit text, as you notice there, when I accidentally did, if you click the text, you can edit it there. Just be aware of that can be a problem sometimes, because the way Adobe interprets text and spacing is going to be its own formatting here. So you might mess up and you might have to like really play with it in order to do it. So just be aware of that fact. That's the line. There we go. Okay. So these are in, now I have to make sure like our instructions are ahead of our checkbox there. So that's good. Okay, great. So we have our form pretty well set up. Now we need to do the accessibility part. Make sure everything is matching up. If you're curious why these are red, that's because those are marked required. So that's why they have that red outline. You can't rely on it though, because someone who's red-green colorblind or uses color inversion because they have diabetic retinopathy or low vision, or they might have different color schemes, whatever. You need to tell them in other ways that a field is required. Again, that's that convention there, making sure your instructions tell them that as well, even though most people will know that, and that like the field itself will tell it either in the description or because you checked that box saying required. Now we're going to use the Prepare for Accessibility tool. If you remember, we had a reading order before that's shown here, but now we need to add these form fields. So we're going to click Fix Reading Order, which is the last option in the Accessibility Tool list. We get this Reading Order panel here. What this does is allow me to assign any kind of, or these specific kinds of tags to the fields while I am doing this work after I select something. So in the case of like this first name here, and this is that trick I was mentioning earlier before, I'm going to draw a box around the form field, but also the label. Now, if you remember, there were these blank indentations here, that spacing that was there. Because those are still technically characters, they show up here. And when I drew that box, it selected them because they were in my selection pane. So I'm going to hold Control to draw another box, and there's a little minus under my crosshair, and I can remove them. So gets rid of them so that they don't get accidentally tagged again, and then I have to deal with blank tags in the middle of my document. The reason I do this though, and to have the label, is because I found if I just do the form field itself and click form field, it will throw it to the bottom of the reading order. And sometimes it'll fight me on where to drag it into the thing. But if I select its visual label with it and click form field, it automatically assigns the number where I want it to be. So in this case, it's put it between first name and last name. It saves me a little bit of extra time and maybe some frustration down the road. So I can do that again over here. Form field. Get rid of these extra boxes. Form field, yada yada. And keep doing that for all of these. Now for checkboxes, kind of want to do the same thing. In this case, get rid of that. Oh, no. It's holding the wrong button. Control. Same idea for form field. For radio buttons, like up here, I can kind of do that as well. In this case, click form field, same idea. It will fit them in where I want them. Now, where it can get tricky is that table, and this is what I was mentioning before, is because there's all these little elements in between, like the table cell and such, and Adobe is saying, there's a line here, that's a path. That might start getting in the way because it's going to try and say, path or image or whatever along with the field. And there's a lot of these little extra things, and I have trouble getting rid of them. So just be aware of that fact. But again, I can tag them, and it didn't assign the order I want there. And that's where I might have to go over here and figure out, oh, okay, it did it correctly. But then there's this like, yep, there's this 16, this path here, because it was like, oh, there's a table cell, there's a line here, and it added another tag. So I wanted to go ahead and delete that and get rid of that because it's kind of in the way. Same for 12. Okay, cool. So now that's fixed. Um, so that's just kind of wanted to point out is that tables can make it harder to do this part of the work. And so try to avoid that if you can. But once you've gone through and tagged all of these and double check your reading order here, because this is that other reading order I mentioned, is if someone was just reading through the document in its entirety, what screen readers call browse mode, they're going to read the document from the start here and then read all the way down. And you want to make sure that, again, this is in the correct order, because if you just leave it as form fields and leave them all at the bottom or something, they'll hear all of the tag labels, but then they'll hear all the form fields afterwards. And if for whatever reason they need to like exit edit mode to go read instructions again, or to look up like codes or something and come back to it, like if you have like US citizen codes or something like that, or immigration, or whatever kind of abbreviations you might have to put in that are in your instructions and then need to come back to them. If things are not in the right order and your label's wrong or doesn't have that information on the form field, they have to try and guess where it goes, or they might not get the right context. So it's very important that you keep things together in the way that people are supposed to interpret them. So make sure again that this reading order is what we want. So you have first name, the label, and then you have first name, the form field. Same thing applies down here. You have first name, 25, then you have first name, 25 characters. Going through that again. Page 2, again, same thing. We didn't identify the extra form field here, so I need to find that again. I believe it's over here. Yep, there it is. Okay. In this case, since that one, I just tagged that, I have to now move it up here, and I'll probably put it here because that's our instructions. Okay. So there we go. That is how you put together a form field or a form. Let me close reading order. And visually we have it set up. We have a table that works. We have our form fields here. Very easy to see. They're nice and large. They're also really well spaced, so it's easier for us to interpret it visually. For someone who's using magnification or has a cognitive disability that interferes with reading print, it is, there's extra borders to make sure that someone who's colorblind is able to see where the form field is, with these underlines here, or required fields. This has the little drop down box, so they know that. If there was a radio button here, it would look like this checkbox here, that kind of thing. If you ever like accidentally fill out a form field and you don't want that, you can go back to prepare a form. And then in the fields options here, you can just hear clear form. It'll get rid of that check or that information there. So if you accidentally fill in something, you can get rid of it. Don't worry. So that's really the bulk of it. I do want to, since we have a little bit of time, if for whatever reason you want to, or if you want to make this form even better and get rid of like the table and such information, this is how you can do so. So, oops, nope, that's the list. Here is our table. Every table, this is the tag tree. So these are all the tags in the document. Like I said, kind of resembles HTML and how it's built. You have the document itself, you have sections, you have the heading up above, you have a list for the list items, you have the table here. This first row of tables is this. So in this case, every table in Adobe, every row has to have the same number of cells. Otherwise, you get an error saying table regularity is incorrect. So even if a table cell is empty, like in this case down here, they still have a tag. Now, if we want to get rid of this and make this read easier to something like a screen reader, so in this case, when I tagged first name as part of a form, it pulled it out and put it with the form, which is great. But I can also click and drag this out of the tag tree and get rid of it. So now this first row, it has these couple blanks here, like this one. That's fine. I can get rid of that. And then I can keep doing that. In this case, like here, this form item for the are you a US citizen? I can pull that out, put that up here, and then I can get rid of this table cell. So this is how I can use the table and have it visually look like this, but I can remove the tags, pull them out, put them in the structure. So the screen reader will just hear, are you a US citizen? Yes, form field. And they won't hear row 3, column 2, are you a US citizen? Yes, edit field. I remove that extra information that is really just an annoyance and just make it a better user experience. So the tag structure, that's kind of your ultimate goal, is to make this as clean as possible. Um, Typically, I tell people, again, if you're new to this, start with the reading order tool, because it's a bit simpler, but easier to understand because you have the numbers and the boxes around here. And you don't have to learn all of the different tag numbers here. Eventually, though, as you do more and more of this work and get more and more comfortable and practiced with it, you're going to end up here and using this, because ultimately, every assistive technology I know of will end up using this as its baseline. With that, I believe I've covered pretty much everything I wanted to. Um, I do want to say sometimes you'll have documents fight you on things, especially older forms. If you're using something that wasn't built from like a Word doc, or was it built from a scan, or it's just an older document, like something created 5 years ago or even 10 years ago. Um, and Adobe's going to try and fight you because it's not able to read the text correctly, or there's a lot of information there. Like the more you try and squish into there, like if you have, this table here, if there was information on all these lines and there wasn't sufficient spacing, like there was just a bunch of checkboxes, like 20 of them, Adobe's going to make that a lot harder to work like this. So in some cases, it's a lot better to start with that Word document, that accessible document, give yourself the space to work with. If you find that the reading order is not playing along with you, which can happen with tables sometimes, or even sometimes with older documents where you tag a form field you created and it's trying to force that up or down in the reading order, that's when you have to do it in the tag structure and move it into place and reassign it. You're going to see a disconnect then because the reading order might not update, but the tag tree is really what matters. So if you fix the tag tree, you should be fine anyway. Then if you need to, you can use the prepare for accessibility. You can check for accessibility. Uh, we go into this detail a lot in other webinars, so I'm not going to run into it. But if you notice, it does have a form section. So if you didn't tag something correctly, or if you didn't put a label on it, it's going to show up here. So it's a good way to check your work after the fact to make sure you've covered everything. All right, now I think I covered everything. Sorry about that. If you have questions, feel free to put them into chat now or Q&A. I have both up, or I did have both up. Where'd my Q&A go? Q&A, there it is. Okay. If you have questions, you can feel free to put them there. You can also reach out to me. I'm going to put my email in the chat. It's the email that I use for sending out the announcements for this, mdod.nva@maryland.gov. Sorry, thought I was going to sneeze, but I didn't. And like I said, the recording, this document I've created, and the Word document will come out to you, and you can go ahead and use this to practice. You can, port it to Adobe. You can prepare a form, save it as a form. You can use this one here, finish the work I did, get some experience with it, do what you want with it. Going to practice making commonly used PDFs more accessible. That's great to hear. Yeah, thank you. Look forward to implementing this to enhance our accessibility. Great. That's excellent to hear. Like I said, if you need more explanation of how just to make just PDFs accessible in general, we have webinars on our YouTube channel. On that, there should be a document accessibility. There's one called Tackling PDF Challenges, where I go into a little bit more detail about particular things like lists and tables, where you can't really use the reading order tool, and we start messing with the tag tree structure. NFB just had their presentation last month. I believe they're going to try and be hosting it somewhere. I'm not sure where, but they have that webinar. We always try to recycle that kind of content regularly. If you are a state agency or state employee, you can request further training from me at that email, and we can set up a session to cover any particular you want. If there's something particular with today's lesson you want to cover with form fields, if there's something you need to cover with Word documents or Excel documents, if you need to cover Google Slides or Google Docs, you can do that. So any state agency in Maryland can request a further training from me. Those of you outside the state, if you work for local and county government, feel free to contact me just for general advice or other resources. I can't provide direct training to you at this time, but I am more than happy to point you to further training. There's a lot available in the state and for free. So, don't limit yourself just because I can only provide training for the state. This has been so helpful. It's not nearly as scary as I've been led to believe. Your explanation of the tag tree is very clear. I feel like I can do this. That's great to hear. Yeah, accessibility, people when they first hear of it and they hear all of this stuff, it's always overwhelming, and I get it, but it's not, it really just takes practice, and once you get some of the basics, like there's this add alt text button here in the prepare for accessibility. I click that, there's no images in this document, but any images I can just run through and add descriptions. Yeah, like it can feel overwhelming at first because you're dealing with this whole new thing you've never had to deal with before. But there's a lot of tools available, and it really should not add too much extra work. It's really just simple things. And then once you've done these basic things, then we can start looking into improving the usability, like that instructional field before. And that's not strictly necessary to be accessible. It just adds another option for users to make it even easier and better. And it's usually really appreciated. Could I please share the YouTube channel? By all means, give me just a moment to grab the link. The username is MDTap Video. It is part of the entire program. We are just a small part of it on there. Whoop, no, no, reloaded. Hold on. There we go. There we go. So actually, you know what? Let me drag it onto screen here. So the videos on here are part of the entire program. So like, here's my webinar from last month. Here are webinars like AT Champions, Pediatric Assistive Technology. Those are from the AT Library, the AT Loan Program. I believe there's a couple on here there's some instructions for particular AT devices that are commonly loaned out or shared. I think there's some things from the financial loan program. If you go to playlists, the IT Access Initiative webinars, that's all of the webinars from our series. So we've been doing this since 2021. We've been recording these and posting on here. So you'll be able to find most of the ones that we've presented here on various topics. do my best to make our publications and form accessible. That's great to hear. That yeah. As long as you're making an effort and improving things, that's really the goal here. There's always more we can do with accessibility, but we got to start with the very basics and hit, those, make it at least usable and readable. Always looking for helpful tips. Yep, I am as well, but good. If you use Word, PowerPoint as it's intended, digital accessibility be for the most part minimal. Yep, that's why I like to point people to start with Word here with fillable forms, is because it does remove a large chunk of the work that you might have to do in other programs to make it readable, since it automatically puts in a reading order for you. But very good point. And that's why like a lot of them will have accessibility checkers. I didn't point it out in Word. We are over time, but I'm going to point this out. But if you need to leave at this time, please feel free. But like in Word, Word has an accessibility checker. And if you have 365, you'll probably have this accessibility check here at the bottom. But if you have 2016 or something else, you can go to File, Info, Inspect Document, check accessibility. You get this here, and you'll get error messages. My table here doesn't have a header because I'm just using it for formatting purposes, but it's going to give me an error there because tables should have headings. It'll give me warnings about this, like if there was an image here that didn't have alt text, it'd show up on here. This is a good place to start. Clearing all these errors doesn't make your document fully accessible, but it does take care of a lot of the basic problems. So very, very useful. Gotten great at Word and PowerPoint accessibility as PDF that had me scared. So glad to see this training. Well, I understand because PDFs can be challenging because the program is intended for graphical work. But yeah, they're not. It really just takes some finagling. They get annoying at times, and I can tell you that. Because like I said, like I can try and assign that reading order sometimes, and it will fight me every step of the way. But it does offer some options that we don't have in other programs. Like Word will always kind of have this basic reading order, but Adobe, we can assign whatever reading order we want. So it lets us play more with layouts. But it's not, I can understand why it's challenging, but just take it a step at a time. But I'm glad you got so much out of this. I'm glad everyone got everything out of this. Former special education teacher, very little scares me. That's excellent. That's good to hear. Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. If there aren't other questions, I guess that will be it for today. Thank you to AI Media for our captioning today. And I'm going to stop the recording here. And I hope you all have a great rest of your evening.